everyone. We're so glad that you're here. Welcome back to our season two family and teacher partnerships live stream. Everything this season is going to have a theme with AI. And so we thought, what better topic than science of reading and AI and how the two can go hand in hand. So I'll kick us off today and then I'll pass this over to Jonathan. But I decided to stick with my two resources that I've kind of stuck with this entire season, talking about Magic School AI and talking about how we can use ChatGPT as well. So it was really fun, honestly, as an educator to take a step back and see exactly how we could leverage the use of Magic School and how students could use it. So I like to just I wanted to share my prompting with you. Jonathan's going to get into some very specific prompting and he has some really great tips for you. But I just thought, why not share what I'm asking it to do and then what it's generating as well. So all I typed in was, what are some ways my students can use Magic School to support the science of reading? And then it gave a ton of ideas. So I'm thinking as a teacher, how helpful this would be. And that's what I did. I started on the teacher side in the Raina chatbot, and I just said, how could my students benefit from using Magic School AI? And then this gave me ideas of what my students could use. And if I were still in the classroom or as I'm working with teachers, I would be sharing this with them and say, hey, you want to build fluency? Look what students can do. They can generate repeated reading passages. They can create timed reading exercises. They can go in and generate question sets for different text types. I love that. It seems like there's something here for everyone, even with our youngest students, all the way up to our oldest students who can be a little bit more independent with this. And then I went on the tools side for students. And I had my science of reading hat on, thinking, how could these tools be used to really benefit students? How could they leverage using some creativity and obviously continuing to develop their literacy? And I started thinking about like the image generator and how, they have to use some rich vocabulary and descriptive sentences and wording to be able to generate the image that they're looking for. So really so many things that our students are already doing in the classroom support the pillars of science of reading. So the writing feedback, that is an amazing tool to use because you're getting real-time feedback on your writing. You don't have to wait for your teacher to grade all 30 essays, or as you get older and teachers are grading hundreds of essays. There's a generator to summarize things. So you are a student maybe in the classroom who, needs just to know the meat of the text and have a summary. So there are some really great generators that I can see students using just to help continue to support their literacy and creativity. And then it was kind of fun to put on my mom hat. So I started thinking about my own 6-year-old who's a kindergartner, who's learning how to read and the love of reading and all these things that are happening, and watching him light up when he can read a page in a book. And so I went into ChatGPT because I know as parents, unless you're an educator, you don't have access to Magic School. Now, your students can access it if the staff or the teachers are using it at your child's school, but ChatGPT, you can use the free version, and that's all I did. I just got on and said, as a parent of a kindergarten student, help me understand how to support them with the science of reading. And I thought it was really great. As a parent, I took a step back to think, are we doing these things? Are we playing the sound games and practicing rhyming and clapping out syllables? And I do, as I'm taking a step back, he does these things. We're at the kitchen table and he'll start clapping out syllables of a word. And so, but to have that in the front of my brain of things that we can be doing, focusing on the letter sound relationships, I think these are just really good reminders for us as parents, the things that we can be doing at home to help promote literacy and that love of reading. And then I loved at the end, it went through all of these things that I can do as a parent, but then it said, would you like specific book recommendations or activities tailored to your child's interest? So I went ahead and clicked on that prompt. And on the next slide, you can see kind of the response that I got. So I said, yes, he loves animals and science, and he started reading books at the first or second grade level. So he's picking up some books that I am not even quite sure how he can read them yet, but he is loving it. And I love that it gave me book recommendations and reading activities. So He loves watching Wildcrats on PBS. I didn't even know that they made an early chapter book. So this was really eye-opening to me that this knowledge is here so quickly at our fingertips and how we can really leverage this as parents. And you can continue prompting. So even after the fun reading activities, at the end it says, do you want recommendations on interactive science kits or apps that encourage reading? And that's what I love about AI. It really is this conversation back and forth. It's your collaborator. I'm not hunting on Google trying to find information that's not as easy to access. So it was really great to be an educator, but it was really great to also think from a parent's point of view how we can help our children at home, and how we can get a better understanding of the science of reading and what that can be looking like both at school and at home. So I'm going to pass it to Jonathan. I can't wait to hear what you have for us today.
Yeah, thank you, Karisa. I love this idea of helping students find books that they're really interested in, because I know sometimes parents and teachers really have a hard time finding a book that hooks their reader. And we know that once we find books that interest students, they really do take off and want to learn how to read more and more. So great idea to share with everyone. I'm going to get into the 5 components of literacy and talk about prompts that we can write as teachers to support each of these 5 components. And before I dive into that, I also just want to share a big exciting thing that came out today in the news, that our NAEP scores as a nation did go down in literacy, but Indiana is now in the top 10. We're 6th, and it's the highest we've ever been. And I think that's due to the very concerted effort from people across the entire state working to support students in acquiring those literacy skills. So it's really, really exciting. And 8th grade also came out in 6th place. So the work we're doing in our classrooms across the state is paying off. And sometimes it can feel frustrating and overwhelming, but it's exciting to see it show up in the data. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about phonemic awareness first. Phonemic awareness is that part of literacy where students are able to recognize and hear sounds in words. And so there are many different domains of phonemic awareness. One of those is that they can manipulate sounds. They can hear one sound in a word, whether that be the beginning sound, the middle sound, or the ending sound. And so a prompt you could write could be create a phonemic awareness word chain to practice initial digraph manipulation. So maybe they're having a really hard time hearing digraphs. Digraphs are those letters that come together to make one sound, like CH and SH and TH. That could be something that you type in to really support a student in that way. You could change this up in any way to support any of those phonemic awareness domains. You can also develop a full routine for an intervention block. So I know lots of districts across the state are using a a supplemental material, maybe like Hegarty, for example, for phonemic awareness. But sometimes when they go to the intervention block, it might not be appropriate to use that exact same resource with students. And so AI can be helpful in creating another resource to practice phonemic awareness. And you could make a 10-minute phonemic awareness routine that addresses all types of phonemic awareness or all the domains. You can also have it work with you to brainstorm additional activities. Maybe your core material or your intervention materials are not helping students attain that skill. So we could type in, specifically, I have a student that has difficulty isolating medial sounds in words orally. What are some different activities that I could try with her? It'll give you, I just did it the other day, 5 different ideas that are much more hands-on approaches to supporting that particular skill. So again, AI is only going to help us if we get specific and clear on what we're looking for. Phonics is the ability to look at words and start decoding those words. So the sound part's really important to have a solid foundation of. And as soon as students know the sounds of letters, we want to be starting to connecting it to print. And that's what phonics is all about. So one thing that happens in classrooms is there might be a skill that a student is struggling with in their progression of skills. And we talked a little bit ago about that digraph skill. In phonemic awareness, it's can we hear the sound? But in phonics, it is can we see those letters together and know that they make that one sound? So we could write a prompt similar to create a word list that includes one syllable words with the digraph CH at the beginning of the word. Maybe students are having a hard time of noticing that CH makes that ch sound. Maybe they're saying just the k sound, or maybe they're saying both of those sounds to be able to make that word, and it's not working for them. So we can target that one skill with a prompt like this. We can also create encoding activities that target vowel teams with this particular prompt. So encoding is the ability to spell those words. So we want to be working on phonics skills that relate to what we're doing with spelling also. So if we're learning about CH words, to be able to decode them, we want to be practicing spelling CH words. This one goes into vowel teams. Maybe the students progressed a lot further past those digraphs. Vowel teams are a much harder skill. So making a word chain that practices the AI vowel team with students. And a word chain is changing beginning and ending sounds of a word or middle sounds of a word, and having students write that new word based on the sounds that they hear to practice that spelling component or that encoding component. And then the third idea for phonics would be to develop a sorting activity to compare different rules. So create a list of words that students can sort with the two categories being digraphs and blends. So we might have some blend words, some digraph words, we cut them up. AI gives us those word lists so we can cut those up for students, and then they can practice manipulating them based on the skill that is present in the word. Fluency prompts could include these. So target specific skills for application in passages. When we're practicing fluency at the early grades, we want to make sure that we're exposing students to words that they've been taught and not all the words. So we can use a prompt like this, develop a decodable passage that is controlled to blends and targets ST blends. So that passage would have lots of blends included in it, so students are getting that practice. And I'm noticing that ST is really hard for my student to remember both of those sounds when they're blending the words. So I'm going to have it really target the ST blend. We could also write a prompt to help develop sight recognition. So as students become more comfortable reading, we want them to begin being able to read words by sight. We want to teach them also high frequency words that don't always follow the rules. That can be included also. So we could say, create a decodable text that only includes CVC words and high frequency words like said, again, and among, so that we can really target those three words that don't follow a lot of the phonics rules that we've been teaching. And lastly, as we think about upper grades are focusing more on morphology, larger chunks of words that carry meaning. And so we could have it create a decodable passage that targets the following Latin roots of rupt, tract, and scrib or script. And that would create a passage for students to get a lot of words that include those Latin roots, so to practice the fluency, but then also to practice the vocabulary component of how can we use what we know about those Latin roots to determine the meaning of different words. The next component is vocabulary. One of the things that I love to do with AI is to make vocabulary relatable, because we know if we provide students with media or visuals or gestures, that really helps them connect that word to meaning. So one example that you could write is develop a photo of SpongeBob that shows him very alert. So using characters that you know students really love and including vocabulary with that helps them hang on to what the meanings of different words are. Second, developing student understanding of vocabulary gradients. So one of my favorite things to do with students is to create a shades of meaning. And how that looks is we start with a less complex version of a word and slowly make it more complex. So we could start with the word said, and then we could get a little bit more intense with said. And we could say something like yelled. Then we could say shouted. Then we could say screamed, and talk about how, okay, when it's at said, that's probably a quieter level. And as we move across the shades of meaning, they're getting louder and louder and louder, and my vocabulary is getting much more complex to show that it's getting louder. And then lastly, generate a student-friendly definition. We could write something like, what is a student-friendly definition for agitated that I can share with my students? This is really helpful because sometimes it's difficult as teachers to think about a student-friendly definition. Like, we know what it means, but we're not sure how to put together a definition that's really supportive to our students understanding it. And then lastly, comprehension. There are lots of different prompts that you can do for this, but here's 3 of them. First, one of the big important pieces in comprehension is that students are able to build and activate their background knowledge. If students don't have knowledge about a topic when they go to read it, they typically have a difficult time comprehending the information in that text or passage. So if you're getting ready to do a unit on rainforests, for example, you could write something like, develop a passage about the rainforest to build background knowledge with my students. That could be something you read aloud and you have conversation about before they go into reading independently or into an interactive read aloud with you. Second, you can develop items that align to DOE item specifications. I know this is a really hot topic right now as we're trying to work through the checkpoints and our summative tests and provide practice for students and ensure that our questions that we're asking within our Tier 1 instruction and our assessments align to the rigor of the standard. So you could put a passage that you're using or have AI create a passage and say, create a question like, go to the item specifications from the DOE, insert that question based on the passage that you provided. It will give you items that match that passage and the rigor of those questions. And we've been using this a lot as we've been building some formative assessments and unit assessments within my district. And then lastly, practicing understanding text structure. So text structure is so important to comprehension because students need to understand how a text is organized. And when they do understand that, they're much more able to understand the information that's presented. And sometimes we don't have access to all of the different text structures on a topic, so it's hard to practice them all with students. So you could go to AI and say, develop a passage that has a specific, like, cause and effect text structure about earthquakes. So it's staying with your theme, but also practicing that particular text structure. So that's all I have for all of the components. I'm going to turn over to Sandy next to share more about how this relates to preschool and early childhood parents.
Such great things, and everything that was shared that Karisa and Jonathan both said is pretty much what I'm going to touch on, and what that looks like for preschool, early childhood, and really thinking about those of us that are parents, as well as maybe some of our early childhood teachers that haven't maybe had as much experience with science of reading because of location, or maybe you are in a standalone preschool or childcare center. But so this first slide, what I really wanted to do is just to give a little bit more background for those of us that maybe have 2, 3, 4-year-olds that are not in kindergarten yet. So a little bit more about what is science of reading. You know, we've heard about it maybe with our kids that are in school, but what in the world does this mean for my kid that is 3 years old? And so just a couple of things to reiterate that Karisa and Jonathan talked about is really in those younger years, focus on the vocabulary building. We have all heard how important it is to read to our kids, to read to children. So just continuing to read and use that repetition with them. Also, and I don't have this on here, but one of the things that is really important is just letting those kids know that they're readers. A 2-year-old can be a reader if they're talking about a picture or they're pointing or they are retelling a book. You know, my 3-year-old reads Brown Bear to me. She just has it memorized, but me reiterating that she's a reader really helps build that self-esteem, that confidence that, hey, I can do this. So really thinking about that repetition and doing that early and often. So we want to start exposing kids to language and books and words and sounds early and do it often, making it part of your routine. And then giving them people to talk to and topics to talk about. And I know that sounds kind of interesting when we're talking about reading, but as they're talking to people, as they're talking to grandma or grandpa or big sister or auntie, letting them talk and then giving them that prompt. Hey, what did you do at school today that you can tell auntie about? And having them pull in, we went outside and we built a snowman. And on that snowman, we put a head on top. So that's helping them really think about some of those keywords. And also, just kind of like I said before, making reading part of your daily routine. Not just books at night, but when you're in cars, pointing out those street signs, at restaurants, take out the menu and read just a little bit to your little one and maybe let them pretend to read back. Well, what do you want off of this menu? I want some French toast. Okay, that's good reading. And also just really, really showing the kids how much words are around them in their everyday world. And then one of this quote that I pulled, so I have two different articles that I referenced. Both of them are linked here. But from birth to 5, children are exposed to language, sounds, and vocabularies that form the building blocks for reading. During this period, the brain is highly adaptable and responsive to learning, making it a prime time for developing essential skills. So really thinking about how critical and important that is, that we are just exposing. We don't want educators do not want kids coming into kindergarten being able to read chapter books. That is not good for kids. Kids can't understand chapter books when they're in kindergarten. I remember my first year teaching, I had somebody come in and say, my first grader can read this grade 6 chapter book. Well, she could read the words, but she had no idea what was going on in the story because it wasn't developmentally appropriate. So we're not saying kids need to come in reading, but we want kids to understand words and that they have meanings and feelings and where we can see them and that they make up the world that we live in. So really exposing them to that reading piece. A couple of other things that I have linked here, and I know, will you go back for me real quick, Jonathan? Sorry. That I have linked here are some great resources. You can click on them. I know they're kind of hard to read, but the first piece that I really love shows you some ideas and activities that you can do for each grade level. And if you notice, it goes all the way down to 0. So what can we be doing 0 to 2 years? You can be, again, picking up that book and reading to that newborn baby, having a conversation with them when you're feeding them, talking about what foods you might eat at dinner. We have blank at dinner. We have yellow corn at dinner. And so even though they can't respond back, having that conversation with them is something that you're exposing them to that's going to later on help them become a great reader. So that first one gives you some ideas per age level. And then the other document, the other infographic is about some activities that you can do at home to try at home. So both of those are click, and you can share those out with the families. You can print them off and put them on your own refrigerator. And then at the bottom, there's a puzzle piece. And those puzzle pieces come together to show you kind of the progression of science of reading for the younger ages. So in 0 to 2 years, we're talking about vocabulary and phonemic awareness. 2 to 3 years, phonemic awareness again, and vocabulary. And then you'll see that they keep building on as they go up. Really thinking about comprehension as 0 to 2-year-old is a little bit different than we might see for our 4 to 5-year-olds. And it's all based on their developmental stages. So from here, then taking that, and what do I do with all of this? So using AI to really develop vocabulary. I wanted to start with vocabulary because that's a really important piece for early childhood. So first thing that I really loved was thinking about interactive animal sounds. And I'm sure we all have some device that has Siri or Alexa or Google. So creating some animal picture cards beforehand and then saying to Google, hey, Google, play an elephant sound, or play the sound an elephant makes, and then having that sound go and then have the child find the animal picture that matches with it. So, just kind of making it that conversation piece, but really still, again, showing kids, hey, you can use this tool to help me understand this word. Using AI to create visuals. And both Chris and Jonathan kind of talked about this, but how we can use an image generator to create and personalize our vocabulary words. So what's really fun, if you've been playing around with the playground on your Apple phone, if you have that or any, is just being able to say, like, kind of like Jonathan said, is to get into those details of create an elephant wearing a yellow raincoat on the beach. And then having the little one go ahead and talk about that too, which I'm going to talk about later in the silly pictures, but having them create images and use their words and the vocabulary words to do that. Another idea was an AI puppet show. So helping to have kids be able to interact and engage with puppets. Just going out there and searching, hey, where can I find an AI puppet show works, or finding an app or a website that will do it for you. And then asking the kiddos questions to make it even more engaging and preparing them for what it looks like once they hit school age. My world, we know that our little ones are so engrossed in what's going on around them. So really using, again, a picture generator or even something like Google Maps and having them label different things they see in their world. Pulling up a grocery store, going to Fresh Time and seeing, let's go from our house to Fresh Time on Google Maps, and then getting into Google Maps and helping with an image creator to put together a picture of a grocery store. And then within that grocery store, let's label some different things, building that vocabulary again. Silly pictures, kind of a lot like the created visuals, is together, create that silly picture. And if you notice, I said together. We don't want 2, 3, 4, 5-year-olds doing this by themselves. That's part of the great thing about science of reading and teaching kids to read, is the talking that goes with it. So together, create a silly picture and make sure kiddos are using specific words along the way. And then have them describe that picture again using those key vocabulary words. And like Jonathan said, really thinking about what vocabulary, and Karisa too, what vocabulary do we want them to learn? We don't want to bombard them. So maybe this week we're going to really just talk about colors, red, blue, and yellow. So let's go back and again, create an elephant and a yellow raincoat with a blue hat and red socks. And let that picture generator create it, and then laugh together and then talk about it. Like that's how it goes. It's not just create it and go on. Create it, engage with it, and talk about it. And then the last one is really showing kids about the spoken text, helping kids know that I can learn new words by using something that will read to me. Not always having something read to them, because you need to read with your kiddo, but showing them sometimes something like books where it will read the text to them, something where they can look at a picture and click on it and identify the different things in the picture, or you creating it yourself, working with some of those Chat GPT or Magic School to say, I want to have a picture where my kids can tap on an item and it will read it back to them. So these are just some ideas to start with, not to replace the person. All of these things should be done with a person, because we want to be able to talk about it, like I said, and take it further. So hopefully these are some ideas that will help with our preschool, early childhood kiddos. Just to finish up, thank you all so much for joining us today. There's a QR code for you to fill out. If you click on it and fill it out, you will be entered in for a special prize from Magic School that you will get from Karisa. And that just gives us a little bit about how we're doing, what you would like to see, and then we're excited for our next time. And we will be doing special populations. How do we use AI with our special populations? So make sure that you follow Keep Indiana Learning on Instagram and X and Twitter, and then follow us on our website as well. You can scan the QR code and join Jonathan, myself, and Karisa on our personal social media sites. And we look forward to seeing you again next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.